first of all, I just have to also pause for a moment and thank the students personally. That was so amazing, and I learned so much from each of you. I think it's so important to hear them, and then also I hope we'll all spend more time reflecting on what they said. They didn't know this, but I was taking notes on you. And I have a list over there. I'm just going to move over here for a second to just share with you some of what I heard, some of the key skills that I heard you talk about. These are things we can't take lightly. And I appreciate the two comments made that what young people gain from these experiences runs very deep and can be life-changing, as we saw. I mean, you found a home for your B word. And there's actually a book on the table that has to say about B's, which you will see before too long. But some of the skills I was noting as they were talking, and you know who you are because you were saying it, risk-taking. Right away, the whole idea of taking a risk. Going in an environment that was uncomfortable, speaking languages that you don't even feel at home with. This incredible sense of risk-taking. Learning how to interview people. Oh my gosh, how many of you knew how to do that when you were a senior in high school? You think about that. Really? Interviewing. Public speaking. Saying easily, I speak at conferences, I run workshops. Grant writing, oh my gosh. Kids as young as 3rd grade can write grants and then they will learn math. It's really, really easier way. Clarifying roles and responsibilities. That was another topic that was brought up. Finding the questions. One of you said, I learned how to find the questions. I mean, my gosh, that's like high-level philosophy, finding the questions. Deeper knowledge, gaining the knowledge, the facts, just rolling off their tongues that they knew about different kinds of populations and information. Being a role model for their peers who are coming back and inviting other people to join them. And then there's others up there. The terms they were using, talking about equity and justice, systemic issues, vulnerability. All of these are terms that should be just part of our academic situation. It should be part of, this is what, how many of the young people will want to keep talking about these things in school all the time? Right? What excites them is finding connections to whatever topic, to these real important, real world issues. And then listening. All of this happens when we listen. Would you agree with that? That we have to learn to listen. So one of the skills, we have an action day. If you don't think, just fasten your seatbelt because we're now going to keep going. And we're going to be diving into 2 key areas. One is, again, Renee did such a great job talking about the skills students will learning. And one of the reasons is we want to highlight how important skills are when you're looking at service learning. Years ago, it was in the early 2000s, I was doing some work in Central California. And I kept going back to the same school area, and I didn't see any progress going on. Just no progress. And I was wondering, what is going on with this? And then I finally realized, and I asked this question, how much of the work being done in service learning is done by teachers and how much is done by the students? Where do you think most of the work is really being done? By who? Which population? Teachers. And I saw what was missing is if we give the young people the skill sets they're missing, then they can do the work. They need these requisite skills so that they can step into these positions. You've been figuring this out on your own, right? And getting the skills, we want to build them in. So one that we want to work on today is listening. Thank you for moving that table. This is who we are and what we're going to be working on. We're going to be working on listening today as an example of a skill, and then we're going to also be doing curriculum development. But I need to pause for a personal moment to tell you I almost wasn't here today because today was the due date of my first grandbaby. Oh. There she is. She came early. I just had to do that. I had to. So that's Blue Jane. She's a sweetheart, and she's 3 weeks old yesterday. Oh, that's why I'm here today.
Congratulations.
Otherwise, I'd be with her mom. So, hi, Liz. So one of the things that you have on your table are the Sustainable Development Goals. If you haven't seen them, how many of you have not seen these before? Raise your hand. Okay. Well, now you have. And there's even posters here. We even recommend every classroom in every school in the whole universe, or at least the world, has one of these up so that students know for what they're learning. That purpose of learning goes beyond getting a grade or getting into college, that it's to be part of the solutions of what's going on, finding the questions and then going after the work that connects us. So today we picked 4 key areas that we're working on. We have 3 tables for environment. Wave us if you're an environment table. Okay. Give us a wave if you're at the poverty tables. How about the literacy and education tables? Yay. And the immigration table. Big, strong, and small. So we have you organized to do some work in this way, but we're all going to work together for a few minutes on this idea of skills. And we're going to focus on this idea of service learning. Some of you have been to many, how many of you, it's the first time in an ECSL meeting? Students say, oh wow. Well, let's give them an applause for showing up. One of the things that we learn about service learning every time we come is there's 5 stages to service learning. How many stages are there? 5. One more time, how many are there? 5. How many are there? 5. I got it, cheerleaders. This is good. So you got 5 stages. And the first one, if we look it up there, and you've got a copy of this in your materials, in that green or yellowish color, chartreuse, what is that color? The first handout, you'll see, has this document on it. And I gave a different version today. I gave one that I use with students. You can go back and use this with your students to help them understand what service learning is. There's 5 stages. Which one do you really start with? Anybody know? Investigation. Investigation, because you have to understand and go deep into what you're learning about. So you have investigation. When you investigate and you find the authentic need, where does everyone want to go next? After you investigate, where do people want to go? Action. Of course they want to go to action, but we say no. In fact, we say it lots of times. No. Everybody try that. It's fun. No. Thank you. So we don't go to action yet because you have to do what before you get to action? Preparation. You know that. All the students were telling us about the preparation they did so they can have meaningful action that they take. So we go from investigation to preparation to action. There's 4 different kinds of action. Should we just review those real quick? Okay. There's direct service. Who can give me an example of what direct service would look like? We heard some of it up here. What makes it direct service? Who's going to give me an example of direct service?
Volunteering at the IRC.
Right. When you're at the, what makes it direct?
Person to person.
Person to person. You see the whites in the person's eyes, right? So if you're working directly, you need to see the whites in the person's eyes. Are you working directly with animals or the environment? Working with bees is direct. Very direct. So you can do direct service, but you can also do, if you can do direct, you can also do indirect. So who's got an example of what indirect service might look like? What might be indirect? Writing grant proposals for an organization that needs it. That's great. Who's got another example of indirect?
Bookkeeping for Mary's list.
Bookkeeping, yes, excellent. You're using your skills, your resources in that direction. So it's using your interests, skills, and talents, and that was mentioned by the panel. Knowing your interests, your skills, and your talents, and putting them to use is what keeps people motivated and connected. You got direct, you got indirect, and this one a lot of you in the room heard about, advocacy. What could advocacy service look like?
Promotion.
Education. So when the students that I put on a panel, yes?
Organizing to change the policies that cause the problem.
Changing the policies, going deeper and changing the policies. And that's what the panel got to. Is we want to fill the food banks, but we've got to at some point have people can deal with the policy issues and systemic issues so we can really shift it up and disrupt what's going on a more permanent basis and move things forward. The 4th kind of action is research service. And I was so impressed to hear these students talking about wanting to go into research because that provides another level of information. So when we do research in high school and give it to Mary's List or another organization who can use it, that's research service. So how many stages are there?
5.
How many kinds of service are there? 4. Y'all are good, but not quite awake. One more time. How many stages are there? 5. How many types of action? 4. All right, that's better. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is this document, and you have this in your materials also. So we're going to look at skills for a minute. I want everyone to right now take a moment. If you're an educator or a parent or a student, whichever role, I want you to jot down on your paper, on a post-it, it doesn't matter, whatever you've got hanging around. What are 3 skills you would like your students to embody by the time they finish school this year? Or if you're a student, what are 3 skills you want to gain this year that just roll off your tongue? You know these skills, you own them, you have them. What are 3 skills, you can write them right on that paper. 3 skills you would like to embody, your students embody by the end of the school year. Take just 1 minute, jot down 3 skills. Okay, who's got a skill? Who's got a skill that they can call out? Yes? Oh, wow, that's a loaded word, isn't it? Discipline. Discipline, okay. I have to pause on that one, okay. The word discipline has a lot of different interpretations. What comes to mind when you hear the word discipline?
Punishment.
What was that?
Punishment.
Yes. A lot of people align it with punishment, but I don't think that's how you meant it. I know that. So how do you mean it? Focus. Okay, this is real important because the word discipline should never be aligned with the word punishment. No, it is. We need to change that if that's going on in your school because discipline comes with the word disciple, which means to elevate your teaching. So you can never punish someone in the name of discipline. So I had to break for that for a minute just because I think that's important. So sense of focus or continuity, let's say. Which stage would you want to make sure when you're doing service or that focus and continuity is part of the process? Which stage would you say, I know it might happen everywhere, but where would I really emphasize it? Direct, indirect advocacy, investigation, preparation, or action, or in the reflective stage or demonstrations telling your story? All of them, but where would it really be emphasized? I'm going to go with preparation, because that's the place you really need to make sure you go deep enough to understand the issue enough that you can really take meaningful and purposeful action. So you would really make sure that that's a follow-through, that you're really looking at what are the different pieces, how do we follow through, and how do we sustain. Who's got another skill? Yes?
Listening.
Oh, listening. Where would listening live? It's all of them also, but where would you really make sure it's alive and well? Investigation. So because you said that, I would like to transition us right now into an experience with listening, and I'm going to actually risk this and get you up on your feet. Everybody has different things. One of the things I have is, I've always been into language and words. Luckily my husband is too. She'd hear us sometimes just dissect words. It's fun. And when I'm looking to what a word means, my last place I look is a dictionary. It's kind of dull. My first place I look is Chinese characters, because they tell a story. They just do. Each Chinese character is made up of multiple characters, so they have a story to them. Now, it's not really big, but up here in this corner, and you have this in your materials, is the Chinese character for to listen. It's actually made up of 5 characters. How many are in your group? 5. So if you would count off really quickly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if there's a double, you just double up. All right, thank you. What you're going to do next is you are going to become that character to listen. I'll explain what I mean. If you're number 1, would you give me a little wave? Okay. You are no longer yourself, you're now an ear. And you'll speak about yourself in first person as an ear. All right? If you're number 2, would you raise your hand? You are now 10 eyes. 10 eyes. If you're number 3, would you raise your hand? You are now undivided attention. Who's my number 4? You are now one heart. Who's number 5? You're a king. I know, everybody likes that one. All right, now what you get to do is in your group is tell everybody in your group what role you have in active listening in the first person as either an ear, 10 eyes, undivided attention, a heart, or a king. What's your role in active listening? Go for it, take a moment. All right, so I need audience participation time. So what was that process like? What was it like to do that just now? What was it like? Anybody, what was it like to do this?
Engaging.
What made it engaging?
We all had our own roles, and we had to step outside of our normal scope of everyday activity and use our imagination.
Great, thank you. Anyone else what it was like to do this? Yes?
Sorry, I'm working on it a lot. I think being aware of what other people's answers are and having what you might have to answer if that was your role.
Interesting. So think of same and different perspectives and responses. Anyone else what it was like to do this? Any other thoughts?
Silly.
Yay. All right, how many people, yes, please.
Well, it sparked curiosity. We were all really interested in hearing how people
sparking curiosity. Yes?
Self-reflective, as everyone is speaking of, like, am I doing that right now?
Thank you. Self-reflective, yes.
It was interesting to see how listening is broken down into components. Not like just, you think it's just one thing, just listen, but it's like all of those pieces can be and need to be present to really reflect back somebody else's experience.
And I was taken by the students. One of the students talked about her listening skills. I can't remember which one, but one of you used the word listening. And she was not just listening with her ears, right? That was incidental. She was listening with her whole being, with her history, with her presence, with her she was listening with her whole body and her mind. So listening is so much more, like you said, Renee, than just your ears. So it's real important. I'm going to read you now how the Chinese characters interpreted. Do you want to hear? I know, it's fun. Okay. The ears hear the words and tones, while 10 eyes look out for the body language. The king of listening lies with one heart of undivided attention to listen to the unspoken thoughts. I got it. That's good. All right, you can thank your group members and find your seat again. Thank you. One time I was leading that experience in China with Chinese educators, and I had an interpreter. And I felt really embarrassed to get them in groups of 5 and have them be part of a Chinese character when that's their language and not mine. I almost didn't do it. It felt really odd. But I did it, because I think that's what we do, is we have to keep stepping in uncomfortable places. And it was a 2-day workshop, and I did that on the first day, and I think I had about 60 educators. And one of the teachers went back to her school, it's a public high school, at the end of that day to run a debate club that she was doing in her high school. And the first thing she did when she got the debate teams together was she had them do this experience you just did. She had them become the Chinese character to listen. And that's how she started that debate meeting. And then as they were practicing the debate, one girl was commenting to another student, giving feedback, and she said, "I don't think you put your heart into it." And the teacher was convinced that never would have been a thought if they had not had that experience. So it can change things. So I'm going to share with you kind of quickly some materials we provided for you that I developed over these years about listening to help young people learn that skill. So if you open up your handouts, you're going to see a document that is like sideways. It's got 3 boxes. Because I did all this research on listening, and it breaks down into 5 key areas, and I broke it down into 3 key areas for younger children. So if you have the age student that you want to introduce this idea of listening to, there's 3 key categories. We watch, we think about the topic, and we ask questions to find out more. They can add key words, they can draw pictures, they can use this as an organizer for what that means to them and what that looks like to them. So for those of you students creating curriculum, this is an example of curriculum. All right? It can look like that. A lot of open spaces for young children. For middle school students, I have a different document. And it has the Chinese character on it, and it breaks listening into 5 categories. And students look at each one, and they decide if at that moment are they good at it, fair at it, or awesome at it. They self-assess, and they put the date on it, and then you practice with them different skills. You can actually practice the skill of listening. So for example, if it was eye contact, I could say, everybody look at me. Everybody look at Renee. Everybody look at me. Everybody look at Renee. Everybody look at Zara in the camera. Everybody look at me. See, we could do that for a while. I could really drive you crazy if I did it fast. But it's a way, what does eye contact mean? Now, we also have to note that for some students, making eye contact is actually the worst thing. There's some neurological patterning that it doesn't work for them, so we have to respect that there are differences, and we don't try to make compliance, we just open opportunity. So we're really looking at the diversity of learning, not just it has to be this way. But it just helps to exercise those kind of muscles. Now, there is one problem with listening that I discovered, and that's called distractions. Does anybody ever get distracted? No. How many of you have been distracted since I started talking? including the speaker. It's a natural thing. And I didn't know that. In high school, I thought there was something wrong with me because I was distracted so much. So you've got a separate document here on distraction. I'm going to run through that really quickly with you and wrap this up really soon. Marissa and I want to talk about curriculum in a moment. But I'd like you to think for a moment. I'd like you to jot down in your mind or on paper, you have like 15 seconds, what are the things that distract you? What gets you distracted? Jot them down. What are things that get you distracted? How many can you write down in 15 seconds? I'm going to guess that there are a couple things on there you could dismiss pretty easily that don't really bother you that much. Can somebody give me an example of distraction that's not such a big deal? What kind of distraction? Yes?
Things that are funny.
Oh, that's fun. I like that distraction.
Me too.
Yeah, I like those. What else? Noises. You can dismiss those easily. Anything else you could dismiss more easily? A fly. Yeah.
Notifications on my computer sometimes, emails, text messages.
Yeah. But sometimes you can get one of those that you can't dismiss so easily. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, you can use airplane mode to turn that off. It's a good idea. So there's some distractions you might have written down that you can't dismiss easily. It could be a family member's health or well-being. It could be my daughter's due date. So there's certain things you can't dismiss easily. And one of the things educators sometimes say to students when they come in heavily distracted is just don't think about it. Does that ever work? No. Thank you very much for that verification. It doesn't work. In fact, I think I could go further with that and say not only does it not work, it's a diss. It puts the student down. It says what matters to you doesn't matter to me, and that's not okay. So then I did a little more research on why we have distractions, and I learned there's a science to it. The reason you get distracted is you can think faster than a person can talk. Isn't that interesting? Please tell your students that. Tell them there's nothing wrong with them if they get distracted. This is actually normal. And I wrote that on the paper. You think faster than a person can talk. But I do have a secret weapon. I'm going to teach you all now on how to handle and put your distractions aside. Not to get rid of them, just to put them aside for a while so they're there later and you can pick them up. Would that work for anybody? You ready to learn it? You ready to be a little bit silly? Yay. Okay. Everybody, we're going to make a mental shelf for distractions. You need to pick up a tiny piece of wood. Everybody, even reluctant people, pick up a tiny little hammer. Thank you. Take the tiny piece of wood and put it by your head. Now we're going to hammer that in. We're going to go. It's going to sound like this: hammer, hammer, hammer. That's one nail. Everybody, ready? Hammer. We've got 3 more times to do it. Ready? Hammer, 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 hammer. You now have a mental shelf for distractions. Give yourselves a round of congratulations. Now you can just set it aside and then pick it up later, right? Everybody good with that? Now, it only works 50% of the time. That's still not bad. How do I know this? From my deep research. All of you who want to do research, don't listen to this. This is not good research. My research was 2 daughters. One used it, the other didn't. That's it. Okay. But I know it worked because one used it. That's 50%. All right, so I'd like to just show you also, I gave you a longer set of materials for your high school. If you want to teach about mindfulness and mindful listening, I've written out the descriptions on how I lead that experience, and there's a student page also. All right, so there's a student page on mindful listening that you can use to really bring mindfulness into the listening process. Again, I'm not going to have time to go through this, but I hope it's useful for you. There's a mistake in the bottom one that says be patient, because it should say listen completely before speaking. All right. How many of you found something in this listening section that you can use? Anybody find something you're going to take back and actually use? How many of you are going to build the mental shelf with your kids? All right, everybody put your hand up. Bring it down. Bring it up. Bring it down. Bring it up. Bring it down. How many are going to use it with your students? I got a few. Okay. Everyone should try it. Extend yourself. Stretch further than you can.